9mm+P versus 45 ACP+P. And what we have today is our Federal HST. Our 9mm+P is a 147 grain jacketed hollow point rated at 1,050 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. And our 45 ACP+P is a 230 grain rated at 950 feet per second through a 5-inch barrel. And I'm going to use my short barrel pistols today, my 3.2 inch Taurus G2C and my 3.3 inch M&P Shield to do this test. And I tested the standard pressure version of both of these just recently and they did fantastic. So we'll see how much better our +P version does. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic gel test. So I'm going to go into plain 10% clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. No fabric in the way that could potentially clog a hollow point or anything like that. And then I'm going to move on to doing more of a real world simulation. 4 layers of sweatshirt material followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches in a real living target. If we can keep these bullets within that back rib simulation without passing through, that means they don't over penetrate and they'll be good to go. So we'll see what we get with a plain clear ballistic shot, the best potential to see how they're supposed to look like, and then we'll move on to doing more of a real world simulation. And then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 9mm+P 147 grain jacketed hollow point. Now with the standard pressure, I got an average of 990 feet per second with the 147 grain standard pressure. So let's see how much of a significant increase we get over 990 feet per second in this pistol with the +P. So 9mm+P. $975, $969, 977, 966, 975. So that's really not much of an increase over the 990 we got with the standard pressure. And you know what I'm saying there, it is not an increase. So our 45 ACP+P with the standard pressure version through this pistol, I averaged 807 feet per second. So let's see how much we get above 807 feet per second with the +P. $775, $852, $847, $857, $858, one more, $804. Did one more just to get a better average there. So there is a little bit of an increase with this. So let's let our ballistics gel block and see how these perform. All right, first up we'll do our plain clear ballistics shot. No fabric in the way that could potentially clog a hollow point. No rib simulation that could potentially slow down its potential for penetration. So this is our best potential to get hollow point expansion. So let's see what we get with our 9mm+P. Let's hit that with our 45 ACP+P. Let's go take a look. All right, so both of those performed really well with the 9mm going quite a bit deeper there. So interesting overall. I don't know where all that water's coming from behind that gel block. It must be in the cracks there, but what we got with our 9mm on the bottom or 45 on top with our energy dump is pretty good overall. So both look really good. And then the actual wound paths, wound channels and all of that in there also look pretty good, and they look pretty similar. It's just that our 45 didn't go as deep. So with our 9mm+P, we went right to about 17 inches even with really good expansion. Our 45 ACP+P, we went to about 12.5 inches with really good expansion. So not bad performance overall. So let's put on our fabric, put in our rib simulation, and see how these do in our real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation: 4 layers of sweatshirt material followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent hitting back ribs. You got to remember that is a half representation of the density, so whatever you see in there is going to be about half that deep in an actual living target. I am looking to keep these bullets within that back rib simulation without passing through, but if it does pass through the back rib simulation, I'll give it about 3 inches that it can go. More than that, it would likely indicate it would pass through an average size individual from a front on shot. So let's see if we get here with our 9mm+P. All right. Let's hit that with our 45 ACP+P. We'll take a look. All right, so both of those failed to expand. Both of those tumbled. Both of those did about the same, and both of them went to, well, kind of similar depths. That's what it looks like from this view. The 45 actually went just a hair further because I can see a little mark where it shows that it did hit that back rib simulation. You can't even see it on camera. It's just barely there. It touched it and then bounced off. So our 9mm+P, no expansion, good damage from tumbling. We have a good penetration of about 17 3/4, so not bad overall for that. Now with our 45 ACP+P, we went right to the rib simulation, so we were at 19 inches of penetration, absolutely no expansion. Looks like the 9mm has a little bit of deformation on that nose, but the 45 has 0 deformation. So I'm going to say both of these are about as good as each other. I can't say that the 45 is necessarily better in this instance. I think it's a little more powerful, and that will account for better quote-unquote stopping power. But, you know, the overall performance isn't a big difference between both of these. So let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a close-up look at them. Then I'm going to shoot our steel and see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel. Here is our 9mm, and here's our 45 ACP. So quite a big difference in the overall size of expansion there. You know, and this is basically what I got with the standard pressure round through this pistol as well. Just really fantastic expansion. So both of those look really good. Now the difference is with the standard pressure with both of these, through these same pistols, I got really good expansion that rivaled the plain gel expansion here. But with the +P, we got none. I mean, there's a little bit with that 9mm, but I mean, it's pretty insignificant. Yeah, at this point, I really can't say that that would, you know, I mean, the diameter, if I measured this, I haven't done it yet, would probably be bigger than 45, but with that pedal. But at the same time, the 45 would have significantly more energy than the 9mm. So it's hard for me to say one would be better than the other. I guess if I had to make a choice here to say which one I think would be more effective, I'm going to say the 45, because energy does come into play a lot of times with effectiveness, and this had more. So I would say the 45, even though it didn't expand, I would say it's probably more effective than that 9mm based on the energy. So just not the best performance I've seen. I'm kind of disappointed with this 2 boxes of HST I've been working with. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target. This is my practical shootability drill, which means I'm just getting a front sight picture and popping these off as fast as I think I can hit the target. I'm not going for tight groups. I'm just popping them off just to kind of feel how they might feel for me in a real actual situation where maybe adrenaline's going. And at 14 yards, that doubles the distance, and maybe that will kind of show me, you know, what my 7-yard accuracy would be with adrenaline going. So 9mm+P, let's see how this does from 14 yards. So it actually has quite a bit of recoil muzzle flip for what it is. 45 ACP. Let's see how this does. Alright, so I'm seeing the same thing with this that I see with most ammo in this is, yes, it has more recoil, but it's a lot more predictable. I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's like it recoils, you feel a certain amount of force, and that amount of force tells you to push that back down with a certain amount of force, and it just recoils really, really nice. It's predictable. As with the 9mm, it's got a lot of muzzle flip, not a lot of like recoil in your hand, so it just mentally throws me off a little bit for my rhythm. And that could just be me, but I find the 45 a little bit more predictable. So let me back it up to 40 yards and see how these shoot from that distance. All right, 40 yards from the target, so I'm gonna line up my sights and squeeze off some shots relatively slow to try to make some good shots at 40 yards. So 9mm, see how this does. Wow. All right, I'm not sure what's going on there. I didn't do so well with that first shot missing. So honestly, not too bad overall for how that shoots out of this pistol. 45 ACP now. Let's see how this thing shoots. A few more. Alright, so that shit's really good, and part of that is, you know, you see me slow down a little bit with this, and that's not to try to give it like an unfair advantage. It is that you kind of feel with that little extra recoil, you kind of gotta slow down, or else you're definitely gonna pull those shots from flinching. The recoil is not that bad, but it's enough that when you take another shot, you feel like you might flinch a little bit, so I have to slow down and really focus. As we're at the 9mm, it's a bad habit, but it is easy to let it get away from you. You don't feel it and you just keep going. And that could be corrected by training, but over all the years I've been shooting, I've never been able to really correct that, because I'm always shooting more powerful stuff, and I go back to that and it feels weird. So that is me, but interesting performance here. So first thing here, why in the world does a +P have less velocity than a standard pressure? And it's not just in these pistols. I tested them in longer barrels too, and saw the same results. So it's not from the cold air. You don't get the higher air density changing warm guns and warm ammo at 12 feet to where it's going to change that velocity. So it's not the cold air. And you know, I tested the standard pressure in cold air. It was colder than this today, and it was still higher out of these pistols. So that's not good. And the performance was okay because it didn't overpenetrate with the 9mm, but not great. Now the 45, this is interesting. I've seen this a bunch of different times through my Glock, where the standard pressure seems like it does well. The 230 grain standard pressure, it'll get good performance even with less velocity. But when I go up to the +P, there's been a bunch of times where I've got no expansion through the Glock with the +P, even exceeding 900 feet per second. And then we got no expansion with this and the +P out of this pistol, even though we were close to 850 feet per second or 830 or something like that. A little bit faster than the standard pressure. That did perform perfectly. This did not. I mean, everything I'm seeing here is almost leading me to believe that the Federal uses a different bullet for the standard pressure that's a little bit softer, easier to expand than the +P. That's the only thing I can think of, because it would make no sense that I'm always getting expansion with the standard but not with the +P. So there is a possibility maybe it has a thicker jacket, but at the same time, from a business standpoint and production standpoint, that makes no sense. So I don't think it is. So I'm baffled. I am baffled by the results that I'm getting here today. That being said, we didn't get any significant over penetration. It did a lot of damage in there. They're relatively accurate. They're sealed at the bullet and the primer end, so it's good quality ammo. I would pick this. I would pick this over like a Fiocchi that will expand every time, because they don't seal those bullets. They're not making them for law enforcement to last a long time in your gun. These might not have great terminal performance, but it's pretty good, and they're sealed and all of that. So I would still pick these. They're good. They're good rounds overall. So interesting results. I'll leave it at that. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.